Let's go Dolphins! The Dolphins are loaded with talent, no doubt, but that might be part of the problem. We have such overburdened position groups that the coaching staff is forced to make brutal, almost unfair decisions. And it's not just about performance, it's about politics, injuries, and front office mistakes. That's right, I said it. Chris Greer is at the center of this chaos again. The guy should have been fired seasons ago, but unfortunately, he's still in charge. The most intense battles are happening now between wide receivers and edge rushers, and let me tell you, it's a bloodbath. Guys who performed well all preseason may not even make the roster. The coaching staff is running out of room, and there's no clear answer. But before I break it all down, if you're a true Dolphins fan, and I mean the kind who's been through disappointments for almost seasons and still shows up every Sunday, click that like button right now. If you've had teal and orange blood for over 20 years, leave a comment. Go, Dolphins! My heart bleeds teal and orange. Now, let's talk about who's on the bubble, who's shining, and who might be leaving Miami with nothing more than a playbook and a plane ticket. Trust me, you'll want to hear this. Let's get right into it because what's happening with the wide receiver and edge rusher positions is pure chaos. And that's not an exaggeration. Starting with the wide receiver room, it's absolutely stacked, and that's making things extremely complicated. Right now, there are 11 wideouts competing for just a handful of spots. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Nick Westbrook-Ikine locked in. No questions asked. But beyond that, we're looking at 5 dudes clawing for just 2 potential roster spots, maybe even just one if Greer screws this up. We're talking about Dwayne Eskridge, Taj Washington, Theo Weiss Jr., Eric Ezukanma, and Andrew Armstrong. Here's the thing though, Eskridge is basically sliding into locked territory based on performance and projection. So now it's down to just one spot left, and that's likely going to be a war between 2 young, talented receivers, Taj Washington and Theo Weiss Jr. This is where it gets messy. Both of these guys are 24. Taj brings explosiveness. He's 5 feet 10 inches, 174 pounds, shifty and electric. Theo's more of a physical presence, standing at 6 feet 2 inches, 210 pounds. He works the middle of the field like a classic possession receiver. It's a stylistic battle as much as it is a statistical one. And stylistically, Theo might have a slight edge given that Miami already has a lot of smaller receivers. Think about it. Tyreek is small. Malik is small. If you throw Eskridge into the mix, that's 3 small-bodied guys. Theo gives them a different look. Now let's break down the preseason numbers. Week 1 against Chicago, Washington shined. He had 3 catches for 53 yards on 4 targets, and one of those was an absolute beauty, a corner route with Zach Wilson under pressure, and Taj just smoked his guy. Meanwhile, we struggled. He was open on key routes, but the ball just wasn't getting there. Blame Quinn Ewers for that one. He was completely off the mark. But fast forward to week 2 against Detroit, it was Theo Weiss Jr.'s moment. He exploded for 6 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. All that while working with Ewers again. It shows chemistry, sure, but here's the debate. Is Theo just looking good because of the connection with Quinn, or is he genuinely that good? Taj, on the other hand, has looked solid with multiple QBs, including Tua, and has been consistent through practices. So the argument leans towards Taj being more versatile and system ready, but Theo might have the higher ceiling and adds physicality this roster lacks. And don't even get me started on the run blocking. McDaniel puts a premium on it. He expects every receiver to do dirty work in the ground game. But even there, the margin is razor thin. Taj graded out at 58.7, Theo at 56.6. That's practically a wash. So what's the move? Keeping 7 wide receivers seems impossible with the needs on defense, cornerback, safety, and especially edge. Which brings us to the next roster battle that's just as cutthroat, the edge rusher group. The Dolphins made a major move by signing 4-time Pro Bowler Matthew Judon this week to a deal worth up to $6 million. You don't make that kind of investment unless you're keeping him. That puts him in line behind Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, and Jaylon Phillips. That's your core 4. The question now is who's going to snag that final edge rusher spot, or possibly 2 if they go heavy due to injury concerns. The names in the mix: Grayson Murphy, Mohamed Kamara, Quentin Bell, Cameron Good, and Derek McClendon. Let me say this right now. Grayson Murphy is the standout. The guy has been terrorizing quarterbacks in preseason and ranks in the top 10 in almost every meaningful metric. Out of 71 edge rushers with at least 30 snaps, he's 4th in pass rush grade, 3rd in pressures, 3rd in sacks, 4th in win rate, and 2nd in QB hits. That's not just good, it's dominant. Dude has made the absolute most of every snap. And not just in preseason, he's been impressing since OTAs and minicamp. The other contender who's been getting serious reps is McClendon, and while he's been okay, he's not Murphy. There's really no way Greer and McDaniel can justify leaving Murphy off the roster unless, of course, they botch the whole cut-down strategy. And remember, they can't stash everyone on the practice squad. There's only room for 17, and edge isn't the only priority. And here's where things really start to get controversial. Because if you're Mike McDaniel and you know both Taj Washington and Theo Weiss Jr. are good enough to contribute right away, not just developmental guys, but legit contributors, you have to wonder why you're being forced to choose. And the blame? It falls right back on Chris Greer. He's constructed a top-heavy roster that's already handcuffed in key areas like corner and offensive line depth. And now McDaniel's being forced to cut NFL-caliber talent just to patch holes Greer should have solved months ago. This is why the fan base is fed up. This is why people want him gone. Let's go back to the trade idea, because it's gaining traction inside the building. There's a real chance Miami could shop one of these bubble receivers, Taj or Theo, for a late-round pick or maybe a cornerback with some upside. And it makes sense. If you know you're going to lose one of them on waivers, why not at least get something back? We're not talking about star-level return value, but a 6th or 7th rounder or a developmental DB could be worth it, especially considering the Dolphins are thin at corner behind Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, and Kader Kohou. But if they don't pull the trigger on a trade, then the cutdown becomes gut-wrenching. You let go of Theo, and you're losing a physical mismatch weapon that doesn't exist elsewhere in the current WR room. You let go of Taj, and you're giving up one of the few receivers on the roster with genuine slot explosiveness and chemistry with your starting quarterback. Neither is replaceable via practice squad. They've both played too well. Other teams will scoop them up within hours. And now, back to edge. This is where another poor Greer decision is lurking under the radar. Signing Juden was a strong move, no doubt, but it also complicates everything. The edge room was already crowded, and now guys who've been grinding since minicamp are suddenly staring down a roster cut. Not because of performance, but because the GM came in late with a flashy signing. Grayson Murphy, thankfully, has made it nearly impossible to ignore him. His preseason impact hasn't just been about sacks. He's winning one-on-one matchups consistently, disrupting timing, and forcing mistakes. He's got the highest motor in the group, and he's playing like someone with nothing to lose. That kind of hunger is what this defense needs. He's already outplayed Bell and McClendon, and when it comes to impact per snap, Murphy's dominating. If the Dolphins go with 6 edge rushers, which they might do just to protect themselves from the injury history of Chubb and Phillips, then Bell could stick around too. But keeping 6 edge rushers would force sacrifices elsewhere, and that brings us right back to the wide receiver situation. There's only so much room, and every extra body at one position means a cut somewhere else, likely in the WR room or at corner, where Miami already lacks depth. Mohamed Kamara and Derek McClendon are intriguing names, especially for the practice squad. Both have shown flashes, but they haven't made the consistent impact that Murphy has. Kamara has physical tools but remains raw. McClendon is steady but not explosive. And Cameron Good? At this point, it's hard to make the case for him sticking around in any capacity. The reps haven't been there, and the production isn't matching up. The coaching staff now faces a nightmare scenario. Do you play it safe and load up on edge rushers because of injury concerns? Or do you take a risk and go lighter there, hoping Juden can stay healthy and Phillips can bounce back to form just to preserve an extra playmaker in the WR room? There's also the psychological side of this. Cutting a young, high-upside player like Theo Weiss Jr. after that performance in Week 2 sends a message, not just to fans, but to the locker room, that you can ball out and still get axed because of roster politics and front office mismanagement. That doesn't sit right. Same with Taj. He's done everything asked of him, made plays, worked with the starters, blocked in the run game, and might still get cut. McDaniel